Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. Thanks to the COIEP team and to the AI engineer team for welcoming me. It's an honor to be in Paris, where Mistral was born a little more than 2 years ago. I'll just use my arrows. It's going to be fine. So what is Mistral? Mistral has been founded, as I said, a little more than 2 years ago by scientists rooted in engineering and science. The initial authors of Gemini, Llama, Chinchilla papers, and with the main goal and objective to bring AI to the enterprise world, and also, obviously, to advance open source and open models. And this is why, after a few months of work, we released Mistral 7B, which was the state-of-the-art small model that actually triggered a spur of experimentations, fine-tuning, and new usages among the community and the open source community. After a few months, we also released the first mixture of expert model, Mistral 8x7B, which was actually a great model that also was very welcome by the community. And it was fun in San Francisco at GTC in spring 24, when some people from one of the biggest oil company in the world came to me and said, "We're building such amazing usage on top of Mistral 8x7B, and we have fine-tuned it, and we're actually putting this in production and getting amazing returns." But we had never heard about them at all. They never reached out, and we never built something with them. That's where we really saw that the mission of providing open source models to actually bring the AI to the masses was also compatible with pushing enterprise beyond and building some strong focus. So what we build at Mistral, sorry about this slide, it's very corporate. I did not make it. But basically, we do have foundational model. This is what the science team is building. We're also continuing pre-training with specific customers to bring more rare languages or specific capabilities to those customers. We do provide Mistral AI Studio, which is a wrapper on top of that, providing any kind of tools and API you need to build complex AI applications. Obviously, this starts with completion APIs, but then you have conversation and stateful APIs, and more than that. Obviously, we also provide some products. So you have heard about Le Chat, which is our assistant, Mistral Code, which is our agentic code completion tool, basically. And we do build custom solutions for specific customers with a strong team of solution and applied engineers. So we started with 7. Now it's more than 100 engineers, 100 researchers, and 100 applied engineers actually implementing those solutions. But you have seen these numbers, and you know that actually POCs fail in production, and that enterprises actually struggle to find some value in AI. And so I'm not going to dive into the precise numbers and everything, but I'm going to talk about how we do try to overcome some of those obstacles and how we try to make AI a reality for our customers. So what do they face? They face issues with data, with the observability layer, with the skills gap, internally and externally. And obviously, sometimes it's our fault. Sometimes the models are not great. So about data. Data is massive, and it's unstructured. Enterprises have accumulated data for the past, for a few years, for a few decades for some of them, and they've put this data pretty much everywhere without an AI policy. And that makes sense because AI did not exist. But without this strong AI governance, this means that you have silos of data everywhere in different providers. That is not attached to the proper metadata. That is not meant for an AI system to actually investigate and dig in. And this means that those poor data management practices actually result to really strong challenges in bringing this data together and bringing value. The fact that we have so many providers is also a challenge, because each provider now knows that this data is worth gold. And so each provider is now inventing their AI assistant, an AI agent. And if you're using SaaS, you now know that you have access to 15 different kind of SaaS assistants that basically all wrap up OpenAI API, Claude API, or sometimes Mistral's API, and basically do the same thing, but over the data that they propose. But none of them work on interoperability. Obviously, we do have MCP servers, and that's great, but that's usually not enough. And that usually means that the providers are in charge of providing you with search, for instance. But search is not always good. And if you want to actually interact with all this data, you need this kind of layer, unification layer, to actually make sense of things that can be spread out on Google Drive, on Microsoft Teams, or on Slack. Obviously, all those providers have a different vision of access control, of RBAC, and it's really hard to have like a unified model of who has access to what. So this is why we're, and obviously you're thinking about RAG, right? If you have access to multiple MCP servers and multiple knowledge bases, you can use RAG everywhere and everything is going to be solved. Well, that's not exactly true because, if you work at super SOC in a corporation, making the best SOCs in the world, and you really want to know what are the SOCs sales of last year, if you just provide this query, well, you might find, great answers in annualreport.pdf, which is from 2013. And then maybe your RAG is going to provide you with 2014 PDF report. But if you do not have the proper context, and this context is very, very enterprise and customer specific, then the model might not even be able to actually understand what it is, because you will have 5 chunks with annualreport.pdf that are in different folders, but this is not necessarily provided to the model. So building a strong context engine that is able to build some heuristics and that is able to actually understand the link between entities that might be residing in different data silos among different providers to actually make sense of this data that is spread out everywhere and map it to some kind of ontology, understanding the entities, and basically providing an AI-first data organization is the key to building strong data-based systems. So another issue, obviously, is the black box phenomenon. So everybody wants to observe, and everybody wants to explain a technology that is inherently non-deterministic. Obviously, this is a challenge. So instead of that, you want to actually provide all the tools that you need to achieve the goals of your customers, which are trust. How can I be sure that the model is right? Well, you cannot be sure. But what you can be sure of is that I will provide you sources that you can check. Or I will classify that based on the input, the output that you got actually makes sense, and that the model did not completely diverge. And so this is providing the set of tools that will get you to the kind of trust that you need, and safety. Safety being very relative, because obviously the safety, if you're building something to moderate Reddit comments, is very different than if you're trying to power kids' chatbot. So this is all context dependent. But this is also extremely important, especially in a regulatory environment that is moving very fast, where you also have to prove to many different actors that you're doing things right. So once you actually collect all this data, you want to watch people do what they do. And in enterprise context, it's really important to use this to understand how people are actually doing their job. How are they processing their days? What kind of workflows are they putting in place? And observing is a key to that, because AI is not just what people have been using, which is basically ChatGPT-like assistants, which are providing a lot of individual value, but do not convert into profits and losses optimizations for companies. So you actually need to understand how people are using it. If you give them a task, how do they do it? And what are the different queries that they actually perform, and how do you automate that? And for this, you need to actually observe all this data and then extract some insights out of them to help the companies change and transform. And then, once you've collected all this data, obviously you can improve your own models. What does it mean to improve your models? Well, that's very easy. You have seen how the chatbot assistants have improved over the years, the past few years. This is because they collected a massive amount of data and were able to optimize the models. Well, you need to do the same thing for enterprise and large customers situations. You are collecting this data. You need to make something out of it. You can make models that are even, sometimes better, sometimes smaller, that are optimized to work with certain set of tools, certain sets of connectors. All of this can be done if you're collecting this data and really try to use it the same way that the big players used it to improve their chatbots. So how do we get to maturity after all that? Well, obviously, there is a model performance part. I will take my responsibility here. You need very strongly aligned models, because you're getting into more and more complex processes with longer system prompts, and you need you need the model to strictly adhere to it. There is a lot of things going on with structured outputs and tool calls. You need them to be very reliable. You need the model to understand the intents, and obviously speed. Swix was talking about Cerebras and fast agents. I think that's something that is obviously, once you've tasted to a fast model, even though you might say it's not the most important thing, it's really hard to go back. And so optimizing the models to make them smaller or to optimize inference is also a key part of what we're doing. The expertise, I mentioned it briefly. Well, people do not really know what AI is. And so the lack of expertise really grows on us because it's hard to explain to the customer what is AI and what is not AI, what to expect, what not to expect. And we need to train the workers at the customers. We need to train our own workers. We need to train everyone to understand how these models behave, how we can improve them, how we can make everything better, and how system prompting works, why the model is behaving quite differently in a certain way. Evaluating this and not just vibe checking or vibing your system prompts is something that you really need to educate the customers with. Otherwise, they will just send you a prompt and say, well, it works. Well, it works, but does it really work on all cases? And so this is really an education problem that we're facing. And finally, all of this is just bringing change, and huge change to corporations and organizations. So AI can be just a tool, but then it's a finite project. But AI is really more of a capacity, and once you've integrated this, you can actually change the way you're actually doing business. It can be a transformation enabler. I did not mention agents a lot, and this is because I usually don't like talking about things I don't know, and I don't know what is an agent. But an agent can be, just doing a micro action and wrapping an MCP call. An agent might be performing a very complex set of tasks. An agent can be pretty much anything, what you want to be. But what matters is the actual business case or workflow that you're trying to solve. What problem are you solving? If agents are a part of the puzzle or the bigger, the big puzzle, whatever. What matters is that you're trying to solve a problem from end to end. And agents can be a part of that or not, whatever. That's important. So how does AI transform organization? Well, there is growth. So how you basically increase profit. You create new use cases, new applications. You're doing new stuff, creating new products, processing new data that you did not used to process before. And this is really bringing new revenue and creating new opportunities. On the other hand, efficiency is also an extremely important part of what customers are asking. How do I how do I reduce my costs, basically? How do I make my organization and my workers more efficient by streamlining their processes, by saving them time, by crushing all this data and providing ready-to-go insights? And those are really two sides of the same coin that are crucial to understand how we can use cases to solve enterprise situations. So to sum it up, you need to build AI your way, and this is really a matter of training and making sure that you actually set up the flywheel of AI, right? You will build, you will deploy, you will observe, then you will improve, and you will start over again. Making sure that you can actually customize things, and that you're not just thinking AI as an off-the-shelf solution, and you just need to enter your credentials, and then boom, then it works. You really need to tailor the AI to your use cases. Obviously, leveraging the community, I mentioned open source at first, but we learned so much by actually publishing our models. And the community has done so much by fine-tuning, providing data sets, providing so many examples on why we were failing. And we're great, for instance, at role-playing. Well, I discovered this amazing community of role-players that were actually providing with extremely long prompts and super weird scenarios sometimes that also help to align the model because it now can understand instructions that are very complex. So open source has been the core of what we've done, and we're also now pushing enterprise solutions. And finally, breaking barriers is essential, making sure that you can actually get the data where it is. And some people are relying exclusively on MCP servers and say, okay, well, you'll have MCP servers for everything. And then you're dependent on many multiple providers doing their job of implementing MCP servers, maintaining them, and providing a good quality documentation, good quality OpenAPI.yaml. Sometimes it doesn't work, and this is why the community is also pushing to get custom browsers or browser add-ons and stuff like this, because you don't want to re-authenticate to 15 different SaaS providers just to get the data. So breaking the silos is also extremely important, and making sure that you avoid vendor lock-in so that you can actually build this context engine that brings everything in a single representation that helps the model perform well. So thank you very much for your attention, and happy to talk after the talk.